Good evening, and thank you very much to Sarah Angel and the amazing team at the Art Canada Institute for including me tonight. I know that it'll be much more fun to dance to A Tribe Called Red, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite you all to imagine an April evening with much, much better weather than right now, only one that may have taken place 91 years ago, in April 1927. And I'd like to imagine a gathering to celebrate the International Exhibition of Modern Art at the Art Gallery of Toronto, an exhibition that was organized by Catherine Dreyer and Marcel Duchamp, the greatest proponents of modern art in the United States, and in our context tonight, both rebels and iconoclasts. This historic exhibition was brought to the Art Gallery of Toronto, as it was called then, primarily because of the perseverance of artist Lauren Harris and the commitment of Harold Tavel, who was the chair of the exhibitions committee at the Art Gallery of Toronto. And we must remember also that the International Exhibition of Modern Art that opened in April 1927 at the Art Gallery of Toronto championed the sort of art that this country had never seen. Many of the paintings included were declared by Franz Johnston as abortions in art, primarily because what people were used to is seeing paintings like these. But things were changing. The year 1927 would be significant in the history of Canadian art. In January, Bertram Brooker showed the first abstract work at the Arts and Letters Club for the first time in Canada. In late August, 3 nudes caused quite a lot of scandal at the CNE. And in December, the National Gallery of Canada opened West Coast Art, Native and Modern, reviving Emily Carr's career, and also for the very first time showing Indigenous art in its galleries. In other words, Canada's traditional art scene was about to receive a shock. But thinking back to April 1927, I like to imagine a group of Toronto artists and writers gathered at a beautiful home at Dantonia Park in the East End of Toronto, the home of Harold and Ruth Tavel, with Catherine Dreyer as their guest of honor. Famous for their parties in the 1920s, bringing together the city's cultural elite, as it was. The Tavels were Toronto's most adventurous and rigorous art collectors of their time. They collected international works by artists such as Paul Gauguin, Henri Matisse, Pablo Picasso, Marcel Duchamp, along with the art of Kathleen Munn. And it is in this rebellious context, if you like, that I would like to introduce you to Kathleen Munn. Munn was a quiet rebel in this revolution. By 1927, she was already such an innovative painter that she's now considered in the company of the most iconoclastic artists in North America. Born into a large, closely knit middle-class family in Toronto in 1887, her parents valued education and really encouraged all of their children, boys and girls, to follow their own interests. Kathleen Munn was the youngest, and she loved art. Well-traveled in Europe and trained in New York and Philadelphia for periods between 1912 and 1928, Munn imagined conventional subjects in a radically new visual vocabulary. So in this conservative, conventional Toronto of the 1920s and 1930s, there were only a very few with whom Munn could truly share her fierce commitment to modern art, as well as a deep interest in the history of art and culture in the broadest possible sense. And it really was in the home of the Tavels that she felt most supported and understood. She kept notebooks like the ones that you were supposed to see, that are all in the library, in the archives of the Art Gallery of Ontario now, where she documented lectures that she attended on Cubism, Futurism, Japanese ceramics, among a wide range of art and design topic, feminism, healthy eating, philosophy, Bertrand Russell, William James, William Blake, just to name a few. Placing herself in the heart of European and American avant-garde movements distinguished her from most of her Canadian contemporaries. Unconcerned with the burgeoning national art movement Although not unaffected by it, she wrote in her notebook, "Nationalism is going out. Provincialism and insularity are less excusable than ever before. We are becoming world-minded." So it is an intriguing idea to frame the elegant, quiet, handsome Kathleen Munn as a rebel. After all, her subject matter was rather conventional and did not change over the 3 active decades of her artistic career. She painted farm animals, still lives, nudes, and biblical narratives. And yet she painted them like no other artist in Canada at the time, and long after her. Her paintings were concerned with color to define form, the idea of releasing paintings from a literal description. As she said, "Perfect beauty is the expression of perfect order, balance, harmony, rhythm. Beauty is a supreme instance of order, intuitively felt, instinctively appreciated." This was her vision, her ambition, her claim. I am going to do something so massive in construction and so simple it will stand out against everything. But making such a declaration was a real dangerous thing at that moment. Munn made these declarations privately to herself and those closest to her. She disrupted the order with her single-mindedness. While working in New York and Toronto during the 1910s and 20s, she developed her singular use of bold colors and experimental technique to paint the ordinary cow in such a painting from 1916, and the mandatory nude, this one perhaps one of her most accomplished paintings, in 1923. Munn exhibited this painting at the annual exhibition of the Royal Canadian Academy of Arts in 1923, which is why we can date it, and it stood out. The Mail and Empire critic described it as unique and a futuristic painting with a cubist suggestion. But often, Munn's dynamic and colorful paintings were seen as baffling and out of place, even while she was being recognized as one of the ablest women painters and one of the most advanced. By the late 1920s, Munn had refined her experimentations with color to achieve a rhythm and a composition akin to musicality, a tribute much sought after by artists engaged with abstraction. Munn painted abstractly, likely earlier than any other artist in Canada, and here you see pure rhythm and movement and life force, all critical preoccupations of advanced art. And when you're looking at our 2 paintings that survived, unknown in Canadian art history until rediscovered by art historian Joyce Siemens, who is here today, who really discovered Kathleen Munn in the early 1980s. And recent research has revealed that in fact they are fragments of a larger canvas. So when placed together, you really see the full power of the original painting revealed. Munn disrupted the status quo. She was committed to creating a new way of seeing. And this is what her contemporary, the artist, writer, and friend Bertram Brooker most admired in Munn and wrote about her in his Yearbook of the Arts in Canada that you see here on the screen. And it had been Brooker actually who introduced Munn to the Tovals. He singled her out for being committed to both the most modern and the most ancient art. And here is, for me, the most fascinating thing about Munn, and what really reveals her fearlessness and her singular commitment to pushing herself further, to seeking higher. In the late 1920s, at the height of her achievements, she gave up color and painting and focused almost exclusively on drawing in black ink and graphite. She embarked on a decade-long, meticulous process of experimentation, producing over 1,000 drawings and sketches like these. Studies for 10 large final drawings based on the Passion of Christ, considered her most significant body of work. This process was a radical refinement of her artistic vision, and her continual experimentation is at the core of her work. In Western art, Christ's Passion is the ultimate expression of the transfiguration of matter into spirit. In her final drawings, Munn's iconoclastic nature is revealed in the way she creates a highly unconventional and original image without abandoning traditional narrative. The sharp shards of the crystalline cosmic landscape, along with the three crucifixes, they appear to pin the composition to the paper. Christ's body is distinct, singled out by a large ray of white light. And in this fractured landscape, Munn includes a thin crescent moon in the top left of the work as a metaphoric reference to the end of Christ's life. Munn was an iconoclast because she created her own visual vocabulary. She devised a unique technique, working mostly at night with the use of a light box and thin paper to build a figure and express its countless positions and views in space. She reduced the contorted and moving figures to schematics, creating a template for each key position reconfigured into a system used to generate movement in the human figure. But in effect, Munn only ever drew one figure, the conceptualized human body expressed in its most idealized form. Powerful and dynamic, her Passion series are striking images of both pathos and ecstasy, fueled by complementary contradictions. The works reveal Munn's drawing virtuosity as well as her ability to integrate modern aesthetics with conventional subject matter. And in doing this, Munn declared her ambition to engage with a grand narrative of European art alongside the great masters like Michelangelo, who she knew and admired. And this is her unique contribution to modern art. Taking on this subject was a bold and definitive statement on Munn's part. The contemporary artist Margaret Priest, also renowned for her exquisite and meticulous drawings, calls this kind of ambition the effrontery of being an artist. I think of it as an audacity that some artists have. They do what they do, no matter who's paying attention or not. Artists such as Munn offer something that cannot be co-opted into myth, cannot be pinned down, and thus drained of its full powers. Munn shaped her own vision, pursued her own interests, and never compromised. In Toronto, a town on the periphery of the art world, constrained by conventions and etiquette, Munn may have been misunderstood and dismissed by most, but she was not deterred and insisted on her singular pursuit. Anything worthwhile must be in the work itself, she wrote at the end of her life. Something inevitable, found in the composing, like nature, like the universe, space, rhythm, harmony, creation. To create is the most formidable and the most dangerous act. Consider it an act of rebellion, out of sheer will to insist, to imagine, to create a new way of seeing. As Munn wrote in her journal, "I believe in myself, since it is all I have." Thank you.